On May 7th, 1998, Creative Financial Group held their annual networking dinner featuring Bobby Knight, head basketball coach of the Indiana University Hoosiers. Over 400 entrepreneurs attended this sold-out event that was held at the Conshohocken Marriott. Bobby Knight addressed the board of directors of the 6 networks: Construction Advisory Network, Food Industry Resource Network, Manufacturing Advisory Network, Medical Advisory Network, Automotive Advisory Network, and Graphic Arts Advisory Network.
We find many parallels between business and competitive team sports. A business manager, like a coach, takes a group of different personalities, varying talents and skill sets, conflicting goals, and motivates them into focusing on one common team effort: winning, and winning big. Indiana University basketball coach Bob Knight personifies motivation and achievement. Knight's college teams have won 3 NCAA championships and the NIT championship. He's guided teams to both Olympic and Pan American gold medals. But he's more than a coach, he's an innovator. He's a tactician. He's a man of strict principles, and above all, he's an educator. In an era when college sports have often failed to hold its athletes to high academic standards, Bob Knight can take immense pride in the graduation rate of his players. In over 27 years of coaching, all but 3 of his 4-year players have earned their degrees. An era of excellence. That's the best way to describe Knight's 26-year tenure as head basketball coach of the Hoosiers. His coaching style may not please everyone, but he's right on track when it comes to motivating young athletes to physical and academic excellence. Creative Financial Group is grateful that he's here with us tonight to share some of his invaluable insights on achieving excellence. Please help me welcome Coach Bob Knight.
What do you think, Tara? Can we start now? I mean, you got nothing else for me to do. I mean, I don't have to pick up dishes or anything. I mean, we can get started now. And I want you to get on her ass before we get done here tonight now. I mean, if there's one person in the room she's going to listen to, it's you. I mean, I've seen her operate, and I'm not sure that... Boy, she wasn't sent here by a rival company tonight. No. She's been great. Tara has really, really been good. And it kind of tickles me to be with a group like this because Creative Finance has obviously been a great bank of knowledge, a great guide for a lot of growth by a lot of different companies in the Delaware Valley. And the companies that are clients of Creative Finance have done, as I read through the prospectus and some outlines on what you've done, have done extremely well. And winning has always been kind of an interest of mine. When Jimmy was a graduate of Naval Academy, and I spent 8 years coaching at West Point. And having been associated with the military for 8 years, it's always amazed me that we've beaten anybody in a war. I mean, I never cease to be amazed at how well we've done. I mean, it just indicates to me, as in athletics, the other side just has a lot of incompetent bastards playing for him over there. But the military seems to be able in a pinch to forget whether it's the Navy or the Army or the Air Force, the Marine Corps, the Coast Guard, whatever it might be, and do the things that are necessary to win. Now, I want you to think about me coaching at West Point. And think about for a second the toughest job that you've ever had. what the hardest period that you've had in a job, the most difficult job you've ever had, and I'm coaching at West Point as a head coach for 6 years. Now, the alumni everywhere else have been taught to be doctors, engineers, businessmen, teachers, nurses, whatever. My alums at West Point have been taught how to use knives, guns, rockets, and those son of bitches are all sitting in the stands when we're playing. Now, that's the environment that I grew up in. That's my business background. I mean, nobody's had a background like that, and yet, as important as I always thought winning was at West Point, and I really don't think that there are schools in the country. I used to argue this. This would be hard for you to imagine, but when I was a civilian, I didn't get along particularly well with a lot of the military brass when I was at West Point. And, you know, protocol and demeanor and used to really be a big part of the approach that some people would have. And I used to counter that by saying, you know, we aren't developing people here to debate. I mean, we're developing people to goddamn win wars here. I mean, I'm not sure that demeanor is a big part of it. I mean, let's go beat somebody's ass. Let's see if we can. So I kind of used to go round and round with these people over this. And yet I love the experience. And I met some great people when I was at West Point. And then after being a coach there for 6 years, I moved on to Indiana. Well, Indiana's had a great tradition in basketball. It's a state that dearly loves the game of basketball, probably more so than any state that we have over a long period of time. High school basketball in Indiana back in the 20s would draw crowds in high school gyms around the state in excess of 5,000 or 6,000 people. And basketball has continued to be thought of in that vein for almost a century now. So into this environment I went, knowing that it was going to be important to have a good basketball team, and yet it was brought to my attention, maybe even a little bit more than I was prepared for, the first morning I was on the job. It was April the 2nd in 1971, and I got a telegram from the Indiana University Alumni Association in Indianapolis. Now, Indianapolis is our state capital, largest city in the state, 50 miles from our campus, and it has by far our largest alumni group of anywhere in the world. And the telegram that alumni group sent me I framed it and put it behind my desk. And it was a great introduction to me as to what was going to be expected of us. And here was the telegram. Coach Knight, congratulations on being named head coach at our alma mater. We're with you all the way, win or tie. And it has essentially been like that for 27 years now. Jimmy, I think you did pretty well with the introduction. But there's no way you wouldn't give it without screwing it up. I want you to know that. I mean, I've had only 2 players that haven't graduated. Now, when you go to 3, you're 1/3 off. And I want to tell you something. Creative finance hasn't been 1/3 off in anything it's done in the last 15 years. Now, we need to put you someplace that will kind of override your Naval Academy education and get you a little different math course here. One of the things that I started out doing when I went to Indiana was, once I got that telegram, obviously paying a lot of attention to winning. But then I thought, you know, everybody wants to win. And I think it's a hell of a lot more important to understand how you lose than it is to understand how you win. And nobody writes about losing. But to me, that's the guts of the whole thing that leads to success. If you eliminate the reasons why you lose, then you only got one other alternative. But if you think about winning and you think about winning and you pay no attention to why you lose, I'm not sure you can ever win as much as your potential would allow you to. I'm the only football or basketball coach in the Big Ten for the past 15 years. How many Penn State graduates have we got in here? All right, let me tell you guys something. First of all, you're going to get a kick out of this. I want to tell you a great story. And somewhere when Penn State, and I love Penn State. I think Penn State is a great school and has made a lot of contributions to the Big Ten. But somewhere, I was at a thing when Penn State was brought into the Big Ten. And somebody in a question and answer thing said, Coach, what do you think about Penn State in the Big Ten? And I said, that's like a 3-day camping trip from Bloomington. Well, I got a scroll from Penn State that had 16,000 signatures on it. You know, giving me hell for saying that Penn State was so far we had to camp out to get there. Well, I had a great answer for it, and I think you'll get a kick out of this. I got a fatigue cap and a backpack that I brought with me to our first game at Penn State. And we're sitting in the locker room before the game, and I got the fatigue cap and the backpack laying on the table beside me. And Joe Paterno comes in. And Joe and I have been friends for a long time, and we're talking, and Joe sees the backpack and the fatigue cap, and he says, what in the hell are you going to do with those? I said, I thought I'd wear them tonight. Joe said, Jesus Christ, you can't wear those things out there. I said, why not? And he said, because they know we're good friends. They may shoot me instead of you if you do that. So, now, let me get to the point for you Penn State guys, and then I'll get on. Write letters to the Big Ten and ask them to name the conference the Big 11, will you? I mean, we had 10 schools when you came into it. We got 11 schools, and we're still the Big Ten. I mean, get a little recognition for Penn State in that league. Some of you guys get irritated with it. I mean, give somebody hell about that. So, I teach this class, and I think I have a responsibility when I've got a kid, whether the kid's playing for me, whether somebody asks me to talk to the kid, or whether I have the kid in class. I think my responsibility is to try and give this kid something that's going to help him or help her do a little bit better job of whatever it is that these kids are going to eventually do. And I think demands are really important on our players. They're important on your players, and they're important on my players. We mentioned a moment ago that there are a lot of parallels in athletics and business, and I think that's a big one. And I think that we get away from demands a little bit. Like I tell these kids in my class, I have about 100 kids in this class, and it's the first semester each year. And it isn't a big class. It's worth 2 hours credit. I tell them if they cut one class, it's a C. If they cut 2 classes, they fail the course. Because when you get out and work, you better be there, and you better be there on time. The class starts at 10 after 10 in the morning, and I lock the doors at 10 after 10. So nobody can get in. I mean, I've turned some kids into track stars on our campus. I don't want to see any hats in here. I don't want to see anybody in here barefoot. And it's kind of interesting. I never have a problem. You know, today, we're kind of afraid to demand things of people. And I've never quite been able to figure that out. I asked these kids in my class on the first day, I say, I want you to write down the names of the 2 best teachers that you've ever had, beginning with your first educational year right up to the present. And these kids are all juniors in college. Got about, probably 35 or 40 girls in the class. And I think most of the other 60 or 65 are boys. I'm not sure. I mean, ponytails, earrings, it's hard to tell. And I'm kind of particular. I'm kind of particular to the girls. And I'll tell you why. You know, they're better organized. They listen better. And I think, generally speaking, girls that are students today are more intent on getting somewhere. It's an interesting thing that I've watched in this class over the past 10 or 15 years. The 15 best students that I'm going to have every semester are girls, because a notebook constitutes the whole grade, that and attendance. I mean, the girls never miss. And I tell them when they do cut a class and they're not there, you bring the doctor personally that told you you can't come to class or it counts as a cut. So I say, okay, let's have the 2 best teachers that you've ever had written down. I give them a couple minutes, write 2 teachers down. So, okay, now put beside those 2 teachers the 2 most demanding teachers you've ever had. 2 people that got the most out of you, however they did it, whether you liked it or didn't. The 2 most demanding teachers that you've ever had that got the most out of you in the classes that they taught. Give them a couple more minutes, and invariably, it's the same 2 people. And then I talk a little bit about demands and the results of demands and how we aren't demanding enough on kids today. You know, I tell a kid that he has to be able to do 3 things to play for me. He's got to play hard. He's got to go to class. And he's got to behave himself. I said, now if you can do those 3 things, you can play for me. And if you can't, don't even think about coming to Indiana, because we are not going to get along. And then I elaborate on that a little bit, just as I do with my class on demands. And then I say, okay, now how many of you had a coach that you didn't like in high school? Well, it's always a girl, again, who's first to raise her hand. Now, here we've got 80, 90 students, and I'm the only coach. Everybody's kind of reluctant to raise their hands, as though I'll identify them and that'll cut them a grade because they had a coach they didn't like. But here's some young gal raises her hand, and pretty soon, and before long, every hand in the room is up. And I'd say, keep those hands up there. No, so I understand that all of you had a coach in high school that you didn't like, whatever that sport was, but you had a coach that you didn't like, and all nodding, and keep your hands up. I say, now, I'm going to give you your first lesson in teaching. We don't like all you little bastards either. And the reaction is really kind of interesting. It's like, you can't feel that way about us. I mean, we don't have to like you, but you have to like us. Then I go ahead and I talk a little bit about personalities. And I've really come to believe that with your players in mind, the results attained within the confines of what you and I dictate to our players are the things that determine most about how we feel about our players. Not, God, this guy doesn't like to play golf, doesn't like to go fishing, doesn't like to hunt. What the hell is there good in this guy's life? You know, I mean, then, or whatever. You know, we all, I think, have a tendency to get hung up a little bit on personality rather than results. And I don't think we can ever let personality interfere with results. And by the same token, how many times have we been less demanding than we should have been with somebody who has a great personality that we truly admire and like, with results that are minimal for what should be obtained in that particular job? You know, understanding how you get beat. You can't take poor shots. You can't throw the ball away. You got to block out. You have to rebound. You got to play as a team. You know, Penn State is my favorite football team because the players don't wear jerseys with the player's name on the back. I mean, it's Penn State playing. When Penn State scores a touchdown, I mean, you don't see. Out of some melee that happens in a football game, when a touchdown is scored, with everybody diving on top of everybody and so forth, the cheerleader's going to come out of it pregnant someday. I mean, score a touchdown like that's what the hell you're supposed to do. I mean, I'm so tired of seeing guys that they're getting their ass pounded 35-3, and the guy sacks a quarterback because he slips, and the quarterback changes direction, and he reaches up and grabs the guy, and he's up, ah! And the score is 35-3. I mean, where the hell has he been when they were getting this lead? That's, again, why I've always really liked Paterno and Penn State in football. I don't put our players' names on our jersey. It's Indiana. The end result, winning a game, winning the season, is what I think you're all about and what we're all about, or at least what I hope we're all about. You know, one of the things that I think such a simple thing that can be so important to it is communication. I had an old coach. Some of you old fans might remember George Ireland, who coached at Loyola University in Chicago. They won the NCAA in 1963. Cincinnati had won the NCAA in 61 and 62, beating a team that I played on at Ohio State both years in the championship game. We had won it in 60. Loyola prevented Cincinnati from winning 3 in a row by beating them in overtime in Louisville in 1963. The coach was George Ireland. Years later, 30 years later, George's grandson came to my basketball camp. And when George dropped me a little note to see when a good time to bring, I wrote back and told George, look, that boy's going to come as my guest. Bring him down. I'll be there. I'll look forward to seeing you. And George wanted to, I think because of that, do something for me. And he brought a little 3x5 card with him, like a little 3x5 card, and gave it to me. And on top of the card, he had written the word assume. And then he hyphenated it. And he said, Bob, when you assume things, I want to share this with you, Bob, because I appreciate what you've done for my grandson, and I wanted to do something for you. I leave this with you. When you assume, you make an ass out of you and me. And we assume a lot because not many of us, you or me, really do the best job in communication that we can do because we assume. How many times have you said to yourself or to one of your partners or to somebody involved in your business, how the hell does he not know this? How could he do this? What? And maybe it's something that we haven't told him not to do, or we haven't explained to him that we want it done. Of all the great tools that we have at our disposal for whatever you want to call it, leadership, motivation, organization, doing what has to be done, simple communication is the best. We're playing in the Olympics in 1984 in Los Angeles. And on the team that I had is Michael Jordan. Now, Michael Jordan is the best that's played anything. I mean, I don't care what it is. The only guy that's ever played in team sport that could be Jordan's equal is Babe Ruth, because he had a great record as a pitcher, a great record as a home run hitter. Jordan is just head and shoulders above anybody that's played that game. He's a great competitor. He's a brilliant kid. I mean, he's just really, really, I'll talk a little bit more about him in a moment. But Jordan's on that Olympic team in '84, and we're playing the Chinese in the first game. Now think about Jordan playing against a lot of Chinese guys. I mean, badminton, second base, or golf. I mean, let those Chinese guys do those three things. If we play basketball, give me a break. Well, the game's going along, and there's about 5 minutes to go in the first half, and the game has long since been over. But we've got an official that's a Czech. And in the Olympics, each team, each country that has a team in the Olympics provides an official for the officiating pool. And then the officials are assigned to games, and they can't work a game where their native country is involved. We had both the men's team that I had and the girls' team that Pat Summitt had in the '84 Olympics. So we have two American officials, neither of which can work either the men or the women from the United States. Well, we've been warned by some people that this particular Czech official is not just a bad official, but the guy might even be kind of dishonest. Now, our team manager, guy kind of in charge of the administration of our team, very close friend of mine, and I picked the people on our staff, and he was the first guy I asked to help us, C.M. Newton, who's the athletic director at the University of Kentucky. Now, when Newton was hired, there were all kinds of problems at Kentucky, and somebody asked me about Newton at Kentucky, and I said, you know, he's going to do a great job there, but I think they should change his title from Director of Athletics to Director of Corrections. Well, this didn't go over real well with a lot of Kentucky people, and I got a little flack from it, but about 3 years later, I'm speaking at a fundraiser in Owensboro, Kentucky, for boys and girls clubs in Owensboro. And on the way down in the morning, Owensboro is just across the river from Evansville, and on the way down in the morning, I'm reading a paper, and in the column on things going on in sport is a little notification that C.M. Newton's contract has been extended by 3 years, giving him a total of 7 years on a contract. And so the people there that night were kind of evenly divided between Indiana Red and Kentucky Blue, but I couldn't hesitate for all my Kentucky friends to read this. I'm sure all you people saw this morning that C.M. Newton, the athletic director at UK, has been given a 3-year extension on his contract. They all kind of applauded and so forth, and I said, that just goes to show you that what I said a couple years ago about Director of Corrections was true, because there the son of a bitch alive could clean that up in less than 7 years. So, Newton, dear friend, was a great coach at Alabama and Vanderbilt, as good a coach as there has been in my era in coaching, is sitting beside me on the bench during the Olympics. And we're playing the Chinese team, as I said, and the kid breaks a shoestring, and they're repairing it, and this Czech official is standing at midcourt, arms folded, kind of like this, looking at the other end of the floor. And Newton, now, I haven't even paid any attention to the official during the course of the game. But Newton, and I don't understand how coaches can do this. I mean, you got enough problems coaching the game, let alone helping the officials. And rarely do I try and help him. But Newton is kind of consumed with this guy. And in international play, only the head coach can ever say anything. Only the head coach can ever get up. So Newton is really badgering me. Bob, get up. You got to say something to this guy. There's another bad call. I mean, see, Charles, I think we're ahead by 31 points. I mean, relax. Hey, we're going to have tougher games. You got to let this get. So finally, to placate Newton, I get up and I walk to midcourt while they're fixing this kid's shoestring. And I holler out at the guy, say, "You speak any English?" And what the hell else am I going to say? I say, you speak any English? Just say, "Do you understand any English?" So I just say, hell with it. And I go back. Newton said, "Kid, that's not good enough. You know, you can't quit with that effort. I mean, what the hell? You know, that's not like you." And, you know, I kind of thought about that, and I'd been to Europe enough to know that, boy, if there's an American dollar involved, they can all speak English. And so I go back out, and I start in again. Anything with English. And then I have a really good idea. I said, "Hablo inglés. Un poquito inglés." I learned a little English once in Puerto Rico, or a little Spanish once in Puerto Rico. And my favorite word was adios. And so, you know, finally I say, "Well, any English at all? Well, let me teach you 2 words. You are an incompetent son of a bitch." Whack. Technical foul, just like that. Now, I wasn't at all disappointed because I'd found a language through which he and I could communicate. See, communication. Now he knows what we're going to talk about. Now I know what he understands. And that's how important I think communication is. You know, preparation. Are your guys prepared? Are your salespeople prepared? Well, I think our people have been prepared. I think our creative finance people are pretty damn well prepared, or you wouldn't be using us. Are your people as well prepared? Are my people as well prepared? I had a roommate at Ohio State. Was a really good athlete, didn't participate in intercollegiate athletics, but was damn good and really liked the outdoors. When we graduated in 1962, he was going to take a trip around the world just to see what the world was like. An 18-month trip around the world. You're an orthopedic surgeon from Penn State, is that what you are? And so he's got to, no. He's going to leave Columbus. He's going to hitchhike to the West Coast, and his first plan is to get a job on some kind of a ship that's going out into the Pacific somewhere, and just work his way around the world. And he's given himself 18 months to do this. Well, he does it in about 14 months, and I still enjoy listening to his experiences. This guy's bought and sold 5 companies, and he's done incredibly well. And a lot of it, I think, just had to do with the guy just saying, "I'm going to learn what life is all about before I ever try to get a job." Well, he left Columbus with $100, and 95 of it was mine. And that's all I had at that time. So you can imagine what percentage of his future 5 businesses I've always said that I own. Well, the little story that I want to relate to you took place. It started in Johannesburg in South Africa. And he was reading an English newspaper, and he was going through the one ads to see if there's something he could do to make $1 while he was there and enabling to move on a little bit further. And he saw that a safari company needed people to go on trips, hunting and photography trips. And so he immediately went to the address, applied, told them about his experience hunting and fishing, and they hired him on. And in fact, he started work that day. And the next day, he was in trucks that he had helped load, and they're headed out into the national park in bush country on a photography safari. And as the last guy in the group, once they got as far as they could drive, he's kind of bringing up the rear, and he's carrying about a 40 or 50 pound pack. And Any of you that have ever had to do that, mostly in the Army, know that the Navy didn't do that, Jimmy. Mostly in the Army, you know there's no way you can get that damn thing where it's comfortable. I don't care how wide the straps are. I don't care how strong your shoulders are. And as the day progressed, you know, he falls a little bit behind the group, carrying that pack. He's got a rifle slung over his shoulder. And they go around a turn in a path in a real rocky area. And as he turns, there's a full-grown male lion sitting on a rock, just ready to pounce on him. Obviously has seen him kind of fall back, and a 50-yard gap between him and the next guy. And just as he sees him, the lion comes off the rock. And I said this guy was a really good athlete, and even with this pack and the rifle, he manages to dive under he demonstrates this to me, dives under the lion. And to this day, he carries a scar from just below his earlobe, all up across the side of his face, just missed his eye, and up into the middle of his forehead, where the lion's back claw raked him as it went over top of him. And as he rolled, he got his hand on the gun, fired a shot, and the lion bounded off into the bush. And he's really upset with this. And he wasn't very well prepared. And he'd gotten sloppy, like we all do, and he'd fallen behind a little bit. And he really had the gun over his shoulder, as he told me, and instead of in a position where he could use it. And he got to really be concerned, what if I'm out with somebody and I don't react any better than I did? And now somebody really gets hurt because I'm not prepared. And when he helped set up camp on that first night out, he just forgot about dinner and put some shells in his pockets, took his rifle, and went out away from the camp and was practicing moving and shooting at a shadow and a rock, a tree. And this went on for a half hour or so, and he'd gotten further and further away from the camp, and he came through a little cluster of trees, and as he got to the edge of the trees, he looked out into this group of rocks, and there was the same lion practicing shorter jumps. And that's what preparation is all about. That's what being prepared to sell. That's what being prepared to play is all about. You know, we were talking a little bit about golf at dinner tonight. And, you know, we've all had an experience where we've jumped out of the car, grabbed our clubs, run to the first tee, and gotten thrashed by the guy that's taken a little time to putt, hit a few balls, and might not be as good, but he's prepared. Of all the great mottos, you know, and of all the things that you can read in books, I think the greatest is the one the Boy Scouts have had. Be prepared. Preparation is far better than the desire to win. I mean, we talk about the will to win. I think it's the most overly used phrase there is in athletics. It's the will to prepare to win. You know, I like phrases. Like a phrase that I really like is "I don't know," followed up by "but I'll find out for you." Another one I like is, "What do you think?" Ask one of your people tomorrow or the next day, just say, "Hey, John, what do you think?" If John says, "Well, I don't know," or "About what?" or "Why?" You know, goddamn, let's replace John. You know, you run a little risk now by saying, you know, you catch people off guard. And you say, "John, what do you think?" "I think you're an asshole." Now, you got to be ready to come back and say, "I'm going to try and change." Or, "John, why do you think that?" Now, you may argue with John a little bit, but I love that with players. Jimmy, what do you think? I think we better rebound against Michigan State or we got no chance. Well, you tell those three guys that, will you? I mean, they're the three guys that got to rebound, Jimmy. That's great. No, so we think we ought to rebound, Coach. I really like to go out and ask the players from time to time. You know, there isn't anything that's better in your business or mine than going through a really nice game, an important game that you've won, a new sales that you've made, a client that you've kept, people that are really responsive to your preparation. But it's even more important to get on to the next game. I always call it last game, next game. We've just played somebody and had a hell of a game. There's about 4 minutes left, and I take them out. And I mean, they come out, boy, there's crowds going, they're smiling, and so they get to me, and let's say we're playing Michigan. They get to me, and so I put my arm around the kid's shoulder, and I say, Jimmy, who are you going to guard Saturday? Well, boy, he better come up with who the hell we're playing Wisconsin on Saturday, and he better know who we're going to put him on because this game's over with. Let's get on to the next game. Let's get on to, and if they think that you're concerned about the next game, they're going to be concerned about it. I've always felt that what you as a coach and I as a coach tolerate, our players are going to be satisfied with. The best administrators, the best coaches that I've ever known are the least tolerant people that I've ever known. Tolerant in their own ways. What do you think, Jimmy? I think we're going to have, Coach, we can handle Iowa's press. And that's really going to help us. And so I try to get my players to the point where they're ready to contribute because I think you and I have to understand that we work with our players in many cases. Like, I let my players decide everything I don't give a damn about. Now, think about that for just a second. We're going to practice on Saturday. I could practice at 8 in the morning, at noon, at 4 in the afternoon. I could say, okay, boys, practice is at 9 o'clock Saturday morning. I say, you guys decide and tell me what time you want to practice on Saturday. I think they should have some say. It's something I don't care about, so why should I decide it? You guys want to go to a movie after dinner? Or you want to watch games on television? Let them, I don't care. That's always been a really big point. I want them to think they're playing with me. But then we never vote on who's going to start the game. And we don't vote on when some kid that's screwing up is going to be taken out of the game. That's when they have to understand that they're playing for me. One of the best players I ever had is a kid that's an assistant coach with the Minnesota Timberwolves now named Randy Whitman. And I really believe that understanding the game, your people understand your game, my people got to understand mine. And Whitman understood it as well as any kid I've ever coached. He played with Atlanta Hawks for 10 years, was a really good player in the NBA, and is a really, really good kid. Was a first-team All-American and was a first-team academic All-American. One of only a handful of kids that have ever done both things simultaneously. And we're practicing one day, and Whitman's bringing a ball up the floor, and I'm standing at midcourt. And I'm looking this scenario over, and we've got a kid named Block, who's an exchange student from Germany. Went to a small school in southern Illinois. And for 5 years, he was a backup center in the NBA. He's a Phi Beta Kappa student, 3.8 ACUM in computer science. While he was playing with Dallas, he worked for Texas Instruments. Spoke 5 languages. Brilliant kid. Had the worst hands I've ever seen. The worst. And I always wanted him to be a little dumber and have better hands. And we had to throw the ball into him high and soft. And I just don't like that because he just didn't catch it. any other way. And so as this scenario develops, Whitman with the ball on the right side, Blop cutting on the left side, I'm really comfortable knowing that Whitman looks up, he sees Blop. He takes the ball on a crossover, he brings it over, he takes it to the middle of the floor, Blop moves in, Whitman gets him posted, he hits him with a high soft pass, and we score. I know that's what's going to happen. But just like when you know what some of your people are going to do, they fool you occasionally. And as I'm standing here watching this, Whitman gets a glimpse of red. His team is in red that night at practice, and he gets a glimpse of red cutting to the basket, and off the dribble he throws a perfect pass. All Blop has to do is catch it, take it up, and dunk it. But the ball goes sailing through his hands out of bounds. When Whitman looks up and sees to whom the pass has been thrown, he takes 2 steps and kicks the ball rack because he knows that there is no chance that Blop is going to catch this pass. He knows it, I know it, and Blop knows it. Ball goes out of bounds. I walk out on the floor, and this is Whitman's 5th year. He'd broken a bone in his foot, and we had to redshirt him for a year. And as players play for me, it's kind of interesting. As they move through the years, their answers get shorter and shorter to the point where they kind of nod if they can, and then that saves both of us a lot of problems. And so I walk out, and I look at Whitman, and I say, Randy, how many years have you been here? 5. How many years have you played with Blop? 2. Have you ever seen him catch that pass? No. Do you ever think he'll catch that pass? No. Well then, let me tell you something. By virtue of your throwing him the ball in a situation like that, you've proven that you're about the dumbest son of a bitch I've ever coached. And so with that, I kind of walk back on the sideline. Now, I thought David did a hell of a job with the invocation, and a particularly good job for a Protestant. I mean, really good. And I'll tell you why. I mean, I've heard these Protestant speakers get up here and give invocations, and the Lord's got to be up there saying, man, I don't have time to do all that stuff. I mean, give me a break down there, will you? I mean, I got a lot of people praying today. I mean, I can't cure everything you want cured today. But David, you were damn good. I thought it was a really good invocation. I think I'm an expert on invocations. Well, I also really believe that the Lord likes basketball. I mean, why, when he could watch anything he wants to watch, should he be watching it in the rain? He doesn't need to get wet. Why would he want to be cold? He's got pretty girls. He's got all the people that are in his universe. He's got teamwork. He's got enthusiasm. I mean, I really believe that the Lord is partial to basketball because every once in a while something happens that makes me believe that he does pay attention. And that day, not 2 possessions later, here comes Whitman up the floor with the ball. Now, as this transpires, I see Blop getting ready to fill the same lane on the other side. Now, Uwe's 7'1", he weighs 255 pounds, Phi Beta Kappa student. He married a gal that's beautiful. She's about 6 feet tall, beautiful gal. 2 years ago, they had their first child, a little boy, while he was playing in the Italian Pro League. And his wife sent a fax to our office about the birth of the baby. I sent a fax back to her, congratulating her and wishing her and the baby well. And I said, P.S., don't ever let your husband hold that kid over anything but a bed. So, I know that Whitman on the dribble is going to look up now, and he's going to see Blop. He's going to get the ball in position. He's going to hit Blop in the post, and we're going to score. And I'm going to be able to say, okay, wait a minute. Now, Randy, that's just what we're after. I mean, that's the way to see the play, to understand what the hell has to be done. That's great, Randy. Now, let's just get away from throwing him the ball where he can't catch it. So I know this is going to happen, but it doesn't. Whitman, again, catches a flash of red, and he does something I've never seen before or since in 35 years coaching this game. Whitman, again, off the dribble passes. But he looks up a little quicker, and he sees that once again, to his dismay, Blop is the recipient of this intended pass. And as the ball leaves his hand, Whitman actually dives after the ball, trying to bring it back. So what I've got is this. I got Blop going to the bucket, I got Whitman laying on the floor, and a ball is on the way to Blop. So I'm kind of trying to watch all of this, and then I focus on the ball, and here Blop is cutting to the bucket, and he just watches the ball sail out of bounds. No effort made whatsoever. So this kind of distracts me from Whitman. And I walk out on the floor, and I say, "Don't move, I'll be back to you, just stay there." And so I go to Uwe, 7'1", German kid, looks down at me in anticipation. I look up at him and I say, "Uwe, I don't expect you to catch that pass. But did you ever think about maybe putting your hands together and batting it back in bounds? Or maybe get your shoulder in the way so we don't lose possession?" Now, again, when you ask, I think you got to be prepared for answers. And the answers never bother me. I'm just glad that kids have answers. And this one was memorable. Looks down at me. In a German accent, he says, "Coach, I agree with you that Whitman is the dumbest son of a bitch you've ever coached." And I just want you to know that if he is so dumb as to throw me that pass a second time, I, Uwe, am much too smart to try and catch it the second time. I walked back past Whitman and I said, "That goes for me, too." Understand the game. Understand the game. Keep away from the things that are going to cause us to lose. Do the things that are going to get us buckets. Well, Tara had wanted me to take some questions, and I'm glad to do so, but I have two requirements on questions. Number one, I don't want to answer any dumb questions. I want intelligent questions, introspective questions, questions that everyone in the room will have an interest in. The second thing is, don't let me intimidate you. Ask any intelligent, introspective question that's on your mind. Now, who would like to start us off? You got no idea how much this has eliminated over the years. Somebody always says something about the media, and my answer is, when some of those guys agree with me, I know I'm wrong. All right, here's what I'd like for you to do. If you've got a question, I'd like for you to stand, give us your question so everybody can hear it, and I don't have to repeat it. Go ahead.
Bobby, you talked a lot about character tonight, and we enjoyed listening to you. Last week, Sports Illustrated did a feature article on NBA stars and some of the lack of character and responsibility. Can you comment on that first?
Well, let's say that Sports Illustrated probably has a truthful validity maybe comparable to Mein Kampf. I think that we have to keep that in mind when we talk about anything that's in that publication. I was asked a question, not exactly your question, but I was speaking at a thing a month or so ago, and kind of a similar question, similar vein. What do you think the responsibility of professional athletes is to be role models? And my answer was not nearly as great as parents. And that's where I think problems with kids start. And yet I have obviously a real problem with a lot of the things we see in professional athletes, either on or off the court. But are those problems certainly more visible, but are they any less important than you encounter in your own businesses from time to time, or we have in politics, or whatever? I think that we pay athletes too much. I think we pay too much attention to what they do or say. I think that we expect too much from them. I think there are an awful lot of people. I mean, I think a nurse that goes to a hospital every day. That's my kind of role model. You know, not a guy that makes $4 million and shows up late for more practices that he's on time to. But, and I think it's important that teachers talk to kids about who and what is important for them to pay attention to.
You have the distinction of cutting Charles Barkley from the Olympic team. What was the reasoning for that? Did you take the success?
Because he wasn't worth a damn. I mean, why the hell else would I cut him? I mean, you have any idea what the pressure on a coach in basketball is in the Olympics to win the gold medal? And if I thought Barkley was going to help me, I mean, he'd have been there. You know, but Barkley had a work ethic that could only be totally inflated to be very poor. And Barkley has since made some interesting comments. He spent 7 years talking about what a screwing he'd taken not being on the 1984 Olympic team. And the year prior to playing on the 1992 Olympic team, composed of all professional players, Barkley commented about how he didn't deserve to be on the 1984 Olympic team. And I dropped him a little note and I said, Charles, it sometimes takes some people longer to learn than others, but the most important thing is that you finally learn. And Barkley just, I told Barkley, he came to camp, he weighed 284 pounds. In 6 days, he weighed 280, no, he weighed 200, let me get this straight. He weighed 284 pounds. In 6 days, he weighed 275 pounds. I told him that he had to lose 9 more pounds. I was going to bring him back for the second go-around in 17 days. You got to lose a half a pound a day. Lose 9 pounds when you come back, and you're going to have a real shot at making the Olympic team. Not only didn't he lose 9, he gained 11. That's why he got cut. And it was quick, too.
University obviously generates a lot of revenue through their basketball program. What's your opinion on paying basketball players in college?
Well, I don't think, like the NCAA, as only the NCAA can do. If the governing body for whatever regulations are involved with all of the things that you do, whether it be investing, whether it be banking, whatever it is, if the governing bodies handled your groups like the NCAA handles college basketball, you'd all be broke. I mean, it'd be amazing what would happen to you. You know, they've just passed a rule that now kids can work during the season and make $2,000. Well, the majority of those kids that make $2,000 are never going to show up for work. It's just an unbelievable can of worms that they've opened. What I have is this. We just recruited a kid from California, junior college kid, from San Jose. He's a really good kid. He wants to work. I've got a friend that has a lot of businesses in that area. He's going to hire the kid for about $10 an hour, which is about the going rate for what he'll have this kid do. It'll be pretty heavy construction work. And this kid can work for 2 or 3 months and make all the money he's going to need for the whole year, along with his scholarship. He doesn't need to be given anything extra. He's going to have a head start on getting a job because he was a player in Indiana over anybody else in Indiana. He's going to have an opportunity to do things in the summer. There are a lot of things that are going to happen for this kid that just don't happen to the non-athlete. And they happen particularly in football and basketball for kids. So I've always felt that the kid through scholarship is far more compensated than what he gives up just to be a player. Not only did Whitman never try that pass again, but he came to me after practice and he said, "Coach, tomorrow can Blop and I play on different teams?" And I said, "No, that's too easy a solution." Well, Michael Jordan is the best player I've ever coached. Well, you didn't say that. I mean, did you serve an apprenticeship in the Big Ten office? Well, I would never among kids that I've had in Indiana pick a 1 or a 5 or anything, because that's unfair to a lot of kids. You know, I don't know that I can judge the best kid. These scouting services around the country in basketball are great. They come out with the 39th best player in America, who happens to be the 17th best player on the Eastern Seaboard and the 3rd best player in Pennsylvania. Now, how the hell do they know any of this? So one day, we're sitting, and we had a week before we played again, and our minds, I said, let's invent a player. So we did. We invented Ivan Renko. One of my assistants had a buddy named Renko, and I thought Ivan sounded European. So we invented Ivan Renko, and we made him a Serb. And I announced on a Sunday television show, as the show concluded, all you Indiana fans are really going to be happy as I tell you that we've just gotten a commitment from an outstanding Yugoslavian player, a Serbian kid named Ivan Renko, a 6'8" kid that you're going to enjoy watching. Thanks for being with us today. Okay, so that's all I said. In the next 3 weeks, it was amazing. Renko was a great shooter, but a little slow. Could really rebound. We'd finally found the defensive player that we needed. I mean, this comes from writers, from these gurus that are involved with recruiting. I mean, it was great. And I had a great ending to this. I was going to call a press conference and announce that Ivan Renko had died in a snowslide skiing on a peace mission from the Serbs to the Croatians. I thought it'd be fantastic. And a guy that was a friend of mine, just like Paterno did away with the fatigue cap and the backpack, a guy that was a friend of mine said, "I don't think you need to get into the political situation in Yugoslavia." So we just kind of let Ivan die a natural death. But I always regret that we didn't bury him in a snowslide in the Yugoslavian Alps. I thought that would have been great.
As a coach and a recruiter, do you ever find any undue pressure to sign talented high school players?
Well, I think that there are all kinds of pressures, but most are on the kid. They're not on the recruiter. They're on the kid. Well, you know, our alumni don't bother me much. We've had a really good understanding about that since day one. So they may say things to some people, but I'm not the recipient of their thoughts. But I think that happens a lot. I mean, it's just like you've got a pressure to produce. So does a coach. I mean, we can talk all we want about all of the good things that coaches can do, but the nature of the game is that you've got to win. I think that you have to add something to that. You got to win by the rules. You got to win fairly, squarely, decently within the concept of the rules, and that's almost a direct quote from Lombardi. But there are a lot of pressures. Coaches are paid exorbitant amounts. I mentioned that players are paid way too much. I had a standard thing with the NBA. You know, I'd get a call about coaching in the NBA, and I'd say, "What's the longest contract that any player has?" 5 years. I said, "Well, I need an 8-year contract." "What's the highest salary?" Whatever it was, I'd double it. And so that always ended my conversation with owners. But one reason why not many owners in athletics are successful is that they really don't understand the value of a good coach. A really good coach is far more valuable than a player. When Patino went to Boston, I made the comment that Boston had won 15 games a year ago, and under Patino they would win at least 30. He added a couple players. Guys before him could have added players. He changed the approach to play, and they won 36 games. Now, there are guys that can do that, but owners have a tendency to, there isn't a guy in professional sport that can do something that's bad enough that nobody in that sport will take a chance on him. It just amazes me. Everybody thinks they're going to cure some guy. Amazing. Well, obviously people in basketball have really been good for me and to me. Red Auerbach, Fred Taylor, my coach at Ohio State. Auerbach loved Havlicek. Havlicek and I played together. I'd drive to Boston all night when I was coaching in high school in Ohio, all night Saturday, after having played a game Saturday night, to see the Celtics play on Sunday afternoon and drive all night to get back and teach class in Akron the next morning. And I got to know Red, and I love Red. Pete Newell, who coached at the University of California, was a great influence on me. As a kid, and I must have had an ability to see something in the future in this, as a kid that I loved Ted Williams. One of the all-time great things in my memory. Have you ever seen the picture of the eagle? The shadow of the eagle? There's a shadow of an eagle. And under that shadow, and obviously totally immersed by the shadow of an eagle, is a little gopher standing outside of his hole like this. And the caption on the cartoon is, "The Last Gesture of Defiance." I love that cartoon. And I picture in my mind Ted Williams going past the press box at Fenway Park like this. So as a 16-year-old, Ted Williams was my idol. And I've gotten to know Ted Williams. And it's one of the great things that I've ever done. Claire B. was a great coach, was a very close friend of mine, and another one of the basketball coaches. But outside of basketball, Ted Williams, I got to know Bench really well. Bench is one of the great players, the best that ever played his position, honest, straightforward. So I've really been lucky. But I've also gone out and asked people. I think we always make a mistake when we don't ask questions, when we don't inquire of others. Jordan, I'll tell our players things about Jordan and say, now, if Jordan could do that, why the hell can't you? If Jordan can be out here 30 minutes early to work on left-handed, how the hell do you think you're going to play? And I used Jordan a lot. And when he played for me, I said, no, I'm going to get on you, and you're not going to know why. But you got to understand, when I say something to you, that makes you a little more human to everybody else out here. And they're all going to think, God, if he's on Mike, I better get going. And that's going to help you in their eyes, and it's going to help us. Do you understand? Absolutely. Never a problem. And we're playing the gold medal game in Los Angeles. We're playing Spain. And the halftime score is 55-26. We've more than doubled the score. And as I'm walking across the floor at the Forum in Los Angeles, I'm handed a stat sheet, and I look at it, and Jordan has played 12 minutes. And he has 19 points, 11 rebounds, and 9 assists. And we're ahead 55-26. And I always want us to play better at the start of the second half than at any time previous in the game. And I always talk about that, no matter how well we've played, and certainly when we haven't played very well. But now, I've just watched 20 minutes of basketball as well as the game can be played. And I'm not really sure what I want to say, and I'm having a hard time coming up with something. I'm not going to go in there and say, God, that's great, boys. That's great. Let's have a Coke and go play the second half. Now, that's not quite the way I've always gone about things. But I don't know quite what to say, and I open the door, and the first thing I see is Jordan sitting at his locker. Bang, light goes on, idea. So I said, I'm going to get on Jordan's ass, and that's going to shake everybody up a little bit. So I walk over, and I say, Mike, you know, when the hell are you going to set a screen, Mike? I mean, you've been in there 12 minutes. You haven't screened anybody. I said, I'm looking at this. All you've done is rebound, pass, and score. When the hell are you going to screen somebody? I said, when you're in the game, we got 4 guys screening. It's like a team. When you're out of the game, it's like a team. We got 5 guys screening. When you're in the game, only 4. You know, when the hell are you going to set a screen? And I mean, Jordan looks at me, and you kind of got to bite your lip a little bit because he has a way of affecting you. And he looks up at me with that grin, and he says, Coach, didn't I see last week where you said I was the quickest player you'd ever been around? And I said, what the hell has that got to do with screening? And he said, Coach, I think I'm setting them quicker than you're seeing them out there. So I say, then just slow them down a little, will you? Now, the halftime's over, and they're going out the door. And Jordan and Chris Mullen, who played at St. John's and who's with the Pacers now, he's been a hell of a player in the NBA. Mike and Chris are walking out together. And I'm kind of behind them, and they really don't know that I'm there. And Chris turns to Jordan, he says, Mike, he said, I don't think you can set him slow enough for him to see it. And I put my hands on both kids. I got Jordan here, and I got Mullen here. And they turn around, and I say, one of you son of bitches is expendable. Now, coaching that Olympic team, we played in 9 cities across the country against NBA All-Star teams. We started in Providence. We wound up in San Diego before the games. These kids beat every NBA player that the league could throw at us. We won all 9 games, and it was great. I mean, it didn't make any difference whether you rooted for Penn State or Temple or LaSalle or North Carolina or Indiana or whoever. Boy, everywhere I went, Coach, let's win the gold medal. Bring it back. Let's get it back. Let's win it. And it was great. And in each of these 9 cities, there was some pageantry, patriotic pageantry associated with the game, either prior to or at the halftime. And a song that's very familiar to all of us was sung in each of these 9 cities. And there are 8 words in that song that I think are the best put together words in all the history of the English language. And they're these: America, America, God shed his grace on thee. And I believe firmly that a part of that grace is the responsibility that you and I have in every way that we possibly can to make sure that those people who are following us have the same opportunities, the same advantages over everyone else in the world that the people who have preceded us, whether it was at Chateau Thierry or at Peleliu or Okinawa or the Battle of the Bulge or Korea or Grenada, or maybe most of all, Vietnam, where a lot of guys had to go that didn't want to go and did the best they could. Part of that grace God has given us is to remember all of these people who gave us the opportunities that we have today, and don't let those coming behind us ever have less than what we've had. I've really enjoyed being with you. Thank you very much.
Creative Financial Group's mission is to be a relationship builder, creative problem solver, information broker, and industry specialist. Our structure and specialization has allowed CFG to emerge as a world-class financial services firm and become the Delaware Valley's fastest-growing financial services firm. Our structure and specialization has also allowed CFG to win many of the industry's top awards for 1997, including the President's Trophy for Overall Agency Excellence and the Judge Willard Phillips for Excellence in New Agency Development. For more information about the networks, please call Amy Farragut at 610-325-6280.